Batten down the hatches, it's hurricane season. Are you ready to survive a hurricane? Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if it's your first time here with us. Today I'm going to be talking about hurricane preparedness. Now, for those of you who don't live within a hurricane-prone area, I would say that 95% of what I'm going to say and show you is pretty universal and could apply to many different emergency situations. So stick around and give your preparedness plan a checkup as well. We have just witnessed the devastation that a hurricane can leave in its wake. If you live anywhere that could possibly be within the path of a hurricane at any time, you must prepare for it, both the storm itself and also the conditions that you may be left in after the storm passes. One thing that hurricane preparedness is not about is running out to the store in the days right before a storm and doing a big shopping trip and panic buying along with the masses. That's the whole point of preparedness, is that the vast majority of your prepping should already be done. I'm going to break it down for you, what you need to do before the storm comes and what supplies you should have on hand for during and after the storm. I'm going to break it down into these categories: safety, food and water, cooking, light, backup power, emergency gear, medical and first aid supplies, and tools and materials for repairs. Before a hurricane is even threatened, there are some things you can do. Make sure that your insurance coverage is sufficient and up to date, as well as documentation of your home and belongings in case you have to file a claim. Take photos and videos of your home and its contents and make sure that they're safely backed up digitally in the cloud. Know your home. Does it have hurricane ties securing the roof? Do you have a backwater valve in your plumbing to keep sewage from backing up into your home? These may be built into your home already, depending on when and where it was constructed. If not, consider adding them or having them added to your home. Check out the trees around your property for any branches and the like that may need to be trimmed or removed to prevent damage to your roof or your home in high winds. Talk about your evacuation plan ahead of time and get it all set up. Have things ready to go in case you decide or are ordered to leave. A bug out bag serves the purpose of having essentials ready to go at a moment's notice. A lot of people dismiss the idea of a bug out bag because they think of it as something for hardcore preppers who plan to take off and exist in the woods or some top secret bunker. If you just change your mindset and think of a bug out bag as an evacuation kit, you'll realize it's something that everyone should have in the event that they have to leave their home in a hurry. Have an evacuation list printed and posted somewhere, like your garage or your front hall closet. These lists prioritize what you should grab in an evacuation depending on how much time you have before you must be gone and how much space you have to take things with you. You can start with a list you find online and tweak it to your personal needs. Set up a contact person for your family who's outside of the emergency zone. If phone service isn't down entirely, then the system might be overwhelmed, and it might be easier to keep concerned family members updated through one outside contact rather than doing all the communication yourself. When a storm is forecast, spend some time securing the exterior of your home. Put away or secure outdoor items such as patio furniture, trampolines, and the like that could be tossed around in the high winds and become a hazard. If you don't have special storm shutters for your windows, cover them with 5/8-inch plywood. Do yourself a favor by having plywood pieces that you've already measured and cut to the appropriate size to save you time as a storm approaches. Depending on the construction of your home, you can get special window clips that are meant just for the purpose of securing the plywood. Otherwise, use duplex nails with a double head to make removal easier when the storm is past. Make sure your car's gas tank is full, as well as any extra gas cans you might have. Fill your propane tanks. Keep in mind that local laws and your insurance company both may restrict the amount of fuel you may store and where you can store it. So check on that with your local fire department and your insurance company. Take some cash out of the bank to have on hand in case the credit card machines are down after the storm. You may be able to use cash to buy supplies, gas up your car, or rent a hotel room, among other things. Do all of your electricity-dependent chores, i.e. get things like laundry caught up as best you can before the storm hits. I know in our house, I feel like we never get the laundry caught up. But just in case you lose power for a significant amount of time after the storm. Now that we've talked about some things you can do to get ready for the storm, let's go over some of the gear and supplies that you should have for during and after the storm. The first thing that I'd like to talk about before anything else is some basic safety items. Make sure your smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms are working and have batteries. Besides those regularly mounted throughout your home, I do like to keep an extra battery-operated carbon monoxide detector with a digital readout with our emergency supplies. I just think it's an important thing with the alternative fuels and equipment that might be used in an emergency. It's a good idea to have one of these right nearby whenever you're cooking with any of your emergency cooking stoves And it's also a good idea to keep this nearby where everyone is sleeping. Because of the digital readout, it's not just going to give you an alarm when the levels are dangerous, but it can kind of alert you if the levels start rising at all so that you can kind of get it under control before it's too late. Also, make sure that you have fire extinguishers accessible. During a bad hurricane, generally emergency services will not come out. So remember, you may be on your own for a while. The next most important categories will be water and food. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail on these in the interest of this video not being 3 hours long, but we do have more in-depth videos on these topics, and I will link those and other relevant videos I mentioned down in the description box below the video. So definitely go and check out everything we have there if you want some more information about any of this. So food and water. Water first. This is so vitally important. A hurricane is a prime example of why it's important to store clean water rather than just relying on filtering or purification. While those things are important to have, during a hurricane, you won't want to be venturing outside your home to gather water to purify, although there may be plenty of it. And if the water becomes contaminated with sewage and the like, well, no thank you. Trust me when I say you'll want to have plenty of clean water available. The classic rule of thumb is 1 gallon per person per day for at least 3 days. But that is just a bare minimum. Remember, this water will be used not only for drinking, but also for cooking and hygiene purposes, and it could very well be longer than 3 days that you'll be without clean running water if your area is hard hit. So don't be stingy with your water storage. Ideally, you already have your emergency water plan in place and have a good supply of water already stored long before a hurricane is on the horizon. It's just a good practice. There are so many other reasons that you may need an emergency water supply. And when a hurricane is on the forecast, water is one of the first things to disappear off the store shelves, and it's also one of the first things to be rationed. So don't leave yourself high and dry when it comes to water. Another thing you can do as the hurricane approaches is to fill your bathtub with water to have extra on hand. Lining the tub with a water bob or aquapod or something similar will keep the water clean and potable. But even without that, you'll have water to use for other purposes. You may also want to fill a few extra buckets and keep them in the bathrooms to have on hand for toilet flushing. We do have a whole video just about water storage, so check that out if you need more ideas for storing water. I'll also have some sources listed down below if you need them. So the next thing you're going to want to have on hand, obviously, is food. Now, what you want to go for with the food is that, number one, it's shelf stable, and number two, you want food that requires little to no preparation to make things easy for you during and after a storm. Now, one thing I like to do is put together 72-hour kits for everyone in my family, 72-hour meal kits. Now, what's in these kits? This one's in a 2.5-gallon hefty bag. There's lots of different ways that you can put these together. And these bags contain basically 3 days worth of food, all of which would be edible without any cooking or heating if you needed to. Some of these things obviously would be better if they were heated, and the plan is that you'll definitely have a way to cook and heat your food. But just in case, if you have to grab this and run out the door and you don't have your emergency cooking gear or something like that, if your gear fails and you're not able to cook things or heat things, you could eat everything in this pack without any cooking or heating. So it's got 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, and 3 dinners for one person, and then a bunch of snacks. You know, don't go stingy with the snacks, especially if you're hunkering down in a storm. You're going to have a lot of time on your hands probably, especially if you have kids. They're going to want to have some things to snack on. And then the kind of foods that I would put in those kits are just little easy breakfast things like this. Lunches, you can either use these pre-made lunch kits or any of these packaged sandwich type of spreads. There's chicken salad, tuna salad, pulled pork, peanut butter, any of those packaged with some individual servings of crackers or even a bag of pretzel crisps like this will make a good lunch. Prepackaged dinners like this. These are tuna and rice bowls, chilies, soups, chunky soups, Chef Boyardee type of things. If they're in a metal can, they could actually be heated right in the can if need be, if you're able to heat them. Another thing that works really well for this is these pouch meals. These are completely ready to eat. You could eat them without cooking or heating. My daughter actually has done that before. She takes these to work on the farm with her. A lot of these tend to be vegan or vegetarian for some reason. I'm not sure why, but they're still pretty good. I found a lot of these at the Dollar Tree. This is just one brand, but there's all sorts of different meals like this, complete meals in a pouch. They're lightweight and they're ready to go. One thing to note, if you're going to use cans, to make sure that they have a pop top or that you store a manual can opener with your meals. And then, of course, a variety of different snacks. I try to make sure that everything in these bags has a shelf life of just about 6 months. If it has a shelf life of 6 months, then that's good enough for me. And we do swap these out every 6 months. You can take the contents out and use them for packing school lunches, work lunches, whatever the case may be, and repack them. So you always have some on hand. Adding in some fruit in for extra nutrition. I love the pouches because they don't require any silverware. There's also little cups like these, and I really like to include freeze-dried fruits because it just gives you a little bit more variety, and I don't have to worry about them getting punctured or leaking like some of these. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you include any kind of disposable silverware that you might need, any type of paper plates, anything like that. Some napkins, paper towels, some wet wipes, everything you need to sit down and have a meal. Now this bag here is done for an individual person. I've also done meals in a bag where the bag contains one meal for the whole family. So you can do this either way you want. Individual style, family style, you can do some of each. I have some videos where I put together some different meals in a bag, and some of these I did in the same way that I did these, meaning if you had to eat it without cooking or heating, you could do that. So I'll link those videos down below. Another thing that we like to use for emergencies are freeze-dried backpacking meals. There's all sorts of different companies that make these. They can be a little bit expensive, but they have a very long shelf life and they only require water, and they're generally very good quality. These right here are Thrive Life. They also have Mountain House, Backpackers Pantry. I mean, like I said, there's so many different companies that make these. Some of them are more individual size meals. The good thing about these is you just have to have boiling water. You can pour the water right into the pouches and they'll be ready to eat in a few minutes. Some companies make them in individual serving sizes, and some like these are more like, 2 or 3 serving sizes. But this is another great way to have some emergency food on hand. And then the third thing that we like to do for emergencies, and I know plenty of people who have gotten through lots of storms and emergencies and blackouts and rolling blackouts with their meals in a jar. I have a playlist of meals in a jar. We really like these in our family. They're great for emergencies because they are shelf stable for even up to 10 years, depending on how you seal them, but you've made them yourself to your family's own tastes and dietary needs. And then they require only water and, maybe 10-15 minutes of cooking to be completely ready to go. So those are some of our favorite emergency food options that would be perfect for a hurricane. Like I said, I will link some videos down in the description box if you want to see some more ideas of how we put together emergency food like this. Once you've got your emergency food all set, you're going to want to think about your emergency cooking plan. How are you going to cook or heat your food? Now, once the storm has passed, if the weather's better and conditions are favorable outside, you can always use your grill or your fire pit, your Camp Chef, things like that to cook outdoors. So definitely make sure that you have your propane all filled up. You have plenty of charcoal on hand if that's something that you use, and store the charcoal in a watertight container. But during the storm, you're not going to want to go outside and cook. And even after the storm, if you're left without power for a considerable amount of time, there might be times that you just don't want to be preparing your food outdoors. One thing that I love and often recommend for cooking indoors is a butane stove like this. Now this comes in a nice case like this. It's very light and easy to pick up and carry around. It's pretty narrow, so it's easy to store this away in a closet or, under your bed, anywhere like that, on a shelf. It doesn't take up too much space. Now this is a butane stove, and butane is generally considered to be safe to use indoors. This is used a lot by caterers. It's used in a lot of Asian countries inside the house on a regular basis. I do recommend, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, always having a carbon monoxide detector on hand, regardless of what you're using to cook with. Now this is the fuel that this type of stove uses. This is a butane canister. This is what it looks like. Butane is one of the more expensive fuels that you can use, but I've been using this can for quite a while. I've cooked quite a few meals on it. I can feel that it's getting a little bit empty, but they last quite a while and they're not terribly expensive. I found one of the best places to buy this type of fuel is at an Asian market, if you have an Asian market. They also have off-brands on Amazon that are pretty inexpensive, and you can get this right at Walmart. This is the Coleman brand that they sell at Walmart. Of course, it is a little bit more expensive being the name brand, but it's a good quality. And butane fuel, besides being safe to operate indoors, it's also a pretty safe fuel to store. So I really like this kind of stove for cooking indoors in an emergency. Now, this particular stove right here is very basic and very inexpensive. You can get it for probably between $20 and $25 right now. This is an 8,000 BTU stove, but this is plenty strong enough to cook anything that you would need to cook. Another option for cooking indoors safely is these canned heat kind of alcohol fuels. Now these, you're not going to so much cook with these probably as you could heat your food. These are not going to cook the way that a flame on a stove would, but the benefit to these is that they are definitely safe to use indoors and they're very inexpensive. You can get these for $1 or less a piece. They sell them at the Dollar Tree. They sell them at Walmart, different brands. The cheapest place that I've found to buy them is in a big case at a warehouse club store. I think it was Sam's Club where I got the name brand, and it was less than $1 a can when I bought the large 24 pack. Now, if you're going to be cooking with this type of fuel, you're going to want something to set it inside of so you can put your food over it. They have little folding stoves that are made specifically for this type of thing that fold down to a super flat package and are really handy to tuck away. You could also put this inside of a baking dish and place a rack over the top of it, or you could even put it inside your oven and put it on a lower rack and put the second rack just above it and then put your food on top of that to be able to warm your food. So that's another option for cooking indoors if a hurricane leaves you without power. So the next thing you're going to want to consider is your emergency lighting, because one thing that's pretty likely to happen in a hurricane is that you're likely to lose your power and be left in the dark. So the first thing you're going to want to have on hand, of course, is plenty of flashlights and batteries. A lot of people have switched to using rechargeable lights, flashlights, and the like. I try to avoid that just because that's one more thing that I have to worry about keeping charged up and ready, and that I have to worry about recharging during a power outage. And if the power stays out for a long period of time, that can become an issue. I know I can store plenty of batteries, so I like to depend on things that use batteries. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about is these little Energizer lights right here. You don't have to have Energizer. This is just one of the brands that we happen to have and use. Now, I love these lights. You can think of this as sort of a way to create your own emergency lighting system. So what these do is they're a little flashlight and they just plug right into your wall outlet. And while they're plugged in, they're turned off. There's no light and they're constantly charging. And what happens is they are able to sense if the power shuts off to the outlet. So if you lose power, they're going to automatically turn on. I like to have these in every room of the house, including the bathrooms. Now, they're not particularly bright lights. They're only 40 lumens. But as soon as the power goes out, they will switch on and you will have a little bit of light in every room. So no one will be left in the dark unexpectedly. And then once the power goes out and the light is on, you can choose to remove these from the outlet if you like, if you need to carry them, around with you to find your other flashlights, find your family members, whatever you need to do. Or you can just leave them plugged into the outlets where they'll remain a nice little source of emergency light so that no room is completely in the dark. And then, of course, just having some regular flashlights. Have as many as you can. Definitely have some bigger, more powerful flashlights, but some of the cheap little dollar ones from Walmart are fine as well. Try to make sure that you have a flashlight at least for every member of your family. And besides just typical flashlights, we also like to make sure we have headlamps. This is very important because this allows you to have your hands free. Now, there's all sorts of different headlamps. There's rechargeable ones. I still prefer the ones that use batteries, replaceable batteries. We have some Energizer ones that we really like. These are actually the ones from Dollar Tree, and these are not bad at all. They're actually pretty bright compared to some of the other cheap ones. Now, it's great to have headlamps for when you need your hands free, if you have to be working on something, even if you're just cooking or something like that. You might want your hands, but you need some light. And definitely have a headlamp for every member of your family, even the kids. Because even if you're just trying to pass time while you're sitting out the storm, you might be trying to read or color or play a game or something like that where you're going to want your hands, but still be able to see. We also have these Makita lights that use the rechargeable Makita batteries. Now, we have a whole slew of these Makita tools and different items, so we have quite a collection of the batteries. So we always have a lot of these batteries charged up, and these lights are really great. We use a lot of our Makita things in emergencies and camping and power outages and things like that. We use these all the time, these lights. Now, this one we like because you can angle the head a lot of different ways. You can have it straight up. You can have it down at a right angle. It also has a strap so we can hang it or wear it around our neck. So we use this one a lot. And we also like this light, which is big, bright, and powerful. And this can be hung or it can be stood on a stand, a separate stand, and used to light a big area. We've used this in our attic and all sorts of different places. So we really like these Makita rechargeable lights. And then besides just having flashlights, you're also going to want to have some lanterns, because these you can just set down and light your whole area if you need to. There are a lot of rechargeable lanterns on the market now. If you're going to do a battery or rechargeable lantern, just make sure to spend a little bit of extra money to get a good one. We do have some smaller ones that we, give one to each of the kids, and those are nice too, but definitely spend the money. I've had some cheap lanterns and I've had some better lanterns, and you want something that's going to put off enough light to be worth it. So this one can run on batteries, and it also can have an optional rechargeable battery pack. And this one gets, it's hard to tell, but it gets really pretty bright. This is 1200 lumens when it's all the way bright. The thing to consider with any light like this, if it has multiple light settings, is of course the brighter light you run, the faster your battery is going to deplete. So definitely use the lowest light setting that you can get away with. You could also choose to use lanterns like these that use lamp oil or kerosene. Now one of the benefits to these is that they're pretty inexpensive. I got these two on sale for about $7.50 a piece. I don't really prefer to use things like this because they do have a flame and have fuel, so they're a little bit more of a fire hazard. Also, anything with a flame is going to put off some heat and burn some oxygen. And during hurricane season, you're probably more likely to be too hot than too cold without the power running. So you probably don't want any extra heat sources necessarily. Same goes with candles. I don't really like to use candles just because of the open flame and the hazard. They are inexpensive. If I do use candles, I like to use these candle lanterns where the light is enclosed behind a glass. This is one of the small ones that has just one candle. They do have larger ones that have 3 candles inside. And then this is something that we have had for a few years that we really like. Now, we haven't actually had to use this in an emergency yet. We use this when we go camping. And in fact, it's been so handy camping that last time we went camping with this, we didn't even break out our Coleman lanterns that we have used for so many years. This is a solar light system, and it does have 3 lights plus a light on this base unit, and then it has a solar panel. And these 3 lights, everything's all connected with some cables, but they're very, very long cables. Here's a little diagram of how it can be used. I don't remember exactly how long the cords are, but Mr. Wicked Prepared did do a video about this system a while back, so I'll link that in case you want to check out more about it. But they're pretty long cords, and so you can hang the lights in different locations, and then they each have a switch that hangs down with them. Now, one of them has a motion sensor on it, which we really like. When we're camping, we actually hang this light kind of right out front of our air mattress where we sleep. It's just far enough out so that our regular motions, tossing and turning when we sleep, does not set it off, but I can lift my hand out front of the mattress and wave my hand and it'll turn on the light. So if we need to get up in the middle of the night, we have a light. That's easy without stumbling around. And then the base unit here does have a radio on it. It doesn't have emergency radio like the weather stations or anything like that, just a typical radio. And it also has the ability to charge cell phones from it. And we usually put this small solar panel right out on the roof of our lean-to when we're camping, and it always charges it right up during the day while we're off hiking or whatever it is that we're doing. It does show you right here how long you can run these 4 lights based if you have it on high power, low power, or medium power. And that's with 1 day of charging. And I can verify that this definitely does charge up, within a day easily. Our campsite this past summer had quite a bit of tree cover. We were still able to find a sunny enough spot to get it fully charged. But we definitely do consider this as part of our emergency supplies. This would be wonderful to use in an extended power outage from a hurricane or any other reason. So we do keep this charged up all the time. The next thing that you're going to want to have in place is your emergency backup power. If it's something that you have the budget and the space for, having a generator, either a gas-powered or a solar-powered or both, is the ideal situation. So this is our gas generator. It's a dual fuel generator, so it can run on gas or propane. I definitely recommend, if you're in the market for getting a new generator, to go with dual fuel if you can. Basically, because after a hurricane or in any grid down situation, fuel can be hard to find. So if you have multiple options for what type of fuel you're able to use, you're more likely to be able to find fuel when you need it. If you're going to use a gas generator, you definitely need to keep safety in mind. Don't run it in an attached garage, even with the door open. Make sure the exhaust is vented away from your home, including not being blown back towards the home by the wind. Turn it off and let it cool down before refueling or working on the unit. And keep it dry, and don't operate it in wet conditions or with wet hands to avoid electrocution. After a hurricane, we always see so many terrible stories of people who succumb to carbon monoxide poisoning when their generator puts fumes into their homes. And just after this last hurricane, I saw a terrible story about 2 men who were gravely injured when their generator exploded. Another good option for backup power is going to be a portable power station like this one. Now, these don't have some of those safety issues that a gas generator would have, and they have a lot of benefits for those reasons. Number one, this doesn't use any type of consumable fuel. It also doesn't put off any kind of carbon monoxide or any kind of fumes like that at all. So these are completely safe to use inside your house. And for that reason, you know, you can keep these with you. You could take these to your upstairs bedroom. You could take these into your upper levels that you had to go to anywhere in your house. You can bring a portable power station like this. Now, this particular unit has a lithium iron phosphate battery, and those batteries are very, very safe. They have no risk of explosion and they have no risk of fire like some batteries could have. And this unit is basically completely silent to run. It's very noise free as well. So this is a very safe unit to have around. This is something that I feel comfortable operating myself. I know that the gas generator, that's Mr. Wicked Prepared's department. I would definitely not feel comfortable using something like that if I was on my own. Something like this, on the other hand, I can definitely use. Now, there's a few different ways to charge these up. This particular unit right here is a 1200 watt unit, but there's different sizes that you can get. You can get anything from a very small unit to a very large unit. This company right here, just about the same time we got this one, they came out with a 2400 unit that is twice this size. So depending on what you need to run, you can choose different sizes for your needs. You can even have more than one of these. Now, there's several different ways to charge the battery in this. I can charge this from my wall outlet, and I can also charge it from the power outlet in my vehicle, which is a really good option to have. And then we also do have 2 solar panels that we can use with this to charge with solar. So we keep this charged up at all times. And if there were a hurricane coming, we would definitely check it and double check it and make sure that it were fully charged. But it does hold its charge pretty well while it's in storage. It doesn't seem to deplete. And then we would have backup power to use during the storm. It has outlets, regular wall type outlets. It has the vehicle type outlet. It has these outlets here. It also has USB and USB-C outlets. So it really has a lot of different options for charging anything that you might need and running anything that you might need. So during the storm, we would have the battery power that was stored inside of the power station. And then after the storm, when this gets depleted, we can take those solar panels outside and we can recharge this over and over and over again. So this is really a great option to have. These are really great for running things like medical devices, CPAP machines. I know I saw a terrible story after Hurricane Ian just happened about an elderly couple who passed away because their power went out and their oxygen machine stopped running. And that was just absolutely heartbreaking. So this is a great option for anyone who has needs like that. Anything that you need to keep charged up or recharge or run off of this. We have run a small mini fridge off of this. We have run a microwave off of this. There's a lot of things that you can run off this. And like I said, you're just going to want to take into account what size of power station is going to fit your needs and your budget. This unit also has a light built into the back, which is actually super bright. It's hard to see in here without the lights off. But that's another great thing about this is this has a light on the back that could basically light up a whole room. It's very easy for me to carry around, hence the name portable power station. A portable power station like this with some solar panels is a great option to have for emergency backup power. Now, any type of generator that you could have, whether it be gas powered or solar powered, is going to help you with a lot of things. It's going to help you keep your fridge or your freezer cold, to keep your food from going bad. It's going to help you keep your devices powered, run your medical equipment, run some fans, anything like that that you need. Keep your tools charged up. There's lots of good reasons to have backup power. And then the absolute bare minimum, if you aren't able to afford any type of a generator, at least try to have a couple of small power banks like this that can keep your cell phone and other small devices charged up. And then, like I've already mentioned, be sure to have plenty of extra batteries on hand in all sizes. This is just a representation of what you should have. You definitely need to have a lot more batteries than this. One thing I like to do is to use my label maker and put a little sticker on the outside of anything we have that uses batteries, saying how many batteries it uses and what size. It's just easy for me to take a quick glance and see what kind of batteries we're going to need if I'm restocking our batteries without having to open everything up and see what goes inside of it. I started this habit after I packed the wrong size of batteries for our battery operated air pump when we went camping one year. It took C or D, I can't remember which, but I just assumed it took the other size and packed the other size of batteries, and we got there and we couldn't use our air pump. And it wasn't because I forgot the batteries, it was just because I didn't check what size went inside. So that's when I started this little habit. In the next category, we just have a few basic emergency supplies that didn't go in with any of the other categories. You definitely want to make sure that you have some manual can openers on hand. preferably more than one in case one breaks. This probably could have gone in with the cooking segment or the food segment, but this is an important thing to have on hand. We love these battery operated fans that we have. We've used these in all sorts of circumstances. These are really wonderful. They fold up pretty flat, so they're easy to store. They have this base that opens up and they stand on the base. They've got a high speed and a low speed. They're pretty big. They're pretty powerful. They do run on batteries, but you can also plug them in, so you can use them as regular everyday fans as well. These are definitely going to be good to have on hand if you have hot weather after the storm and your power's out and you don't have any air conditioning. We actually did a whole video just on keeping cool when the power goes out, so if you want to check that out, I will link that video. But this is a really invaluable piece of grid down emergency equipment that we love to have on hand. We have several of these. And next, you want to make sure that you have some sort of emergency radio where you can receive news and updates and weather information. Now, this emergency radio does get all the weather channels. It gets AM, FM, shortwave. I really like this one. This is a really good brand. This has a multitude of ways to charge it up and keep it charged. It has rechargeable batteries built in, so you can plug it in and charge it right up. But it can also take just some regular disposable AA batteries, which is really important to me in case I'm not able to get this charged or keep this charged any other way. It also has, like a lot of them have, it has the hand crank charger, and it has a little solar panel charger. Now, honestly, with any type of device like this, anytime they have the solar panels like this, the hand crank, you can't really expect to be able to do a whole lot with those. With a solar panel that size or the hand crank, it's going to be tediously slow, but it's good to have those options if you have absolutely no other option, to have another way to charge them up. This can also be used as a battery backup charger for your phone or other devices like that. I have mixed feelings about that. They make a lot of devices like this and lanterns and things like that that can be used to charge your cell phones. I don't know that that's the wisest thing to do, because then you're using your battery power to charge your cell phone and you won't have the battery power to use the device as it's originally intended, as an emergency radio or a lantern or whatever the case may be. So I definitely feel like it's better to have dedicated backup power that is used to charge your cell phone and your devices, and to use these devices for what they're intended for. But you definitely want to have an emergency radio. This one also has a flashlight on it, and under this panel it has 5 LED little reading lights. So get yourself some sort of emergency radio. You may also want to have some sort of two-way radio for communication if the cell phone towers are down and the phone lines are down. A lot of those radios, we have some GMRS radios. A lot of those have the weather channels built in as well. And you can also use them to communicate with others in your community and your neighborhood. I know some people who have gotten out old CB radios to communicate with after a storm. So keep in mind that you may want to have something on hand for communication, and that they may also have the weather channels built in. Also, don't forget about your toilet needs if you're without power and running water. I put together an emergency toilet kit for our family. I will link the video where I did that down in the description box below as well. Another thing to keep on hand in your hurricane kit are things to keep your family busy and occupied while they're sitting out the storm and have no power. Things like coloring books, pencil and paper, little card games like this, decks of cards, simple board games. If you have kids, glow sticks are a great thing. They can play games with these. They'll have fun with them. They can also provide a little bit of light for them and help you keep track of them in the dark. So definitely have some grid down ways for your family to pass the time. Another thing you may want to consider having on hand are some sandbags. Now, in severe flooding, they're not going to do anything, but in a milder case of flooding, they can help keep water out of your front door, out of certain areas of your home, certain parts of your property. So it's not a bad thing to have on hand. Another thing you might want to consider is some people who live in areas that are prone to flooding or areas that it might flood. If you have an attic on your home, an upper level, oftentimes people will retreat to their upper levels as the water level rises. So some people like to stash certain items up in their attic when a hurricane's approaching, in case they were to get trapped in their attic. Items such as an axe can help you break out of your attic if you have no other way to get out. It also can't hurt to keep some life jackets and even an inflatable raft or an inflatable rescue boat up in the attic in case you have to make an escape through that route. You definitely want to make sure that your first aid and medical supplies are well stocked and up to date. Whatever type of first aid kit you have, they do have pre-made kits. I prefer to put my own kits together so I have control over what's in them, but it's okay to start with a pre-made kit and just add to it. I'm not going to go too in depth on the first aid kits because that would be a whole other video of everything that you should have in your first aid and medical supplies. And I will get a video done on that soon. But I'll just go over some of the most important things to have for a hurricane. Because remember, like I said, emergency services generally will not go out during a bad storm. So you're going to be on your own for a little while to take care of yourself and your family. So having some basics like pain relievers, fever reducers, antihistamines, antidiarrheals, and some electrolytes is definitely important to have. Wound care is going to be another thing that's very important. Being able to keep a wound clean and treat and dress it appropriately is going to help keep infections from setting in. So you're going to want plenty of sterile wound wash. You might even want a few extra gallons of sterile water to have on hand for cleaning wounds. Plenty of antibiotic ointments, plenty of wound dressings. Besides just Band-Aids, you're going to want to make sure you have plenty of gauze, bandages, tape, things like that. Definitely have some butterfly closures, some steri strips, something like a micro mend, which can work kind of like sutures if you don't have sutures. Burn dressings are going to be important to have. Now we do have my trauma kit. This is with me all the time. It usually lives in my car, but my car is always with me. So if I need it and I'm at the house, I can run and get it out of the car. If we had a hurricane coming or anything significant like that, I would definitely take it out of the car and bring it into the house. And in here we do have things to treat more serious traumatic injuries, things like a tourniquet, like Quick Clot and wound seal, a skin stapler, things like that to treat more serious wounds. Things like prescriptions and other medications, you definitely want to check up on your prescriptions, the things that your family needs on a day-to-day basis. Make sure that you're not going to run out during the storm or shortly after the storm when you may not be able to get more. Check and make sure that you have at least a couple weeks worth of any prescription that your family needs. And if you're running low, get them refilled. Talk to your pharmacist or your doctor if you need help extending your prescription a little bit. If you have or can get a supply of emergency antibiotics, this would be definitely an important thing to have. Like I said, you may not have access to emergency services. You may not be able to get to the hospital or the doctor. And something that might typically just be sort of a minor annoyance, like a UTI, could become something much more serious if it's not able to be treated. So this is definitely a good thing to have on hand. Also, this book, The Survival Medicine Handbook, we love this book. I recommend this to everyone. This is just a good thing to have on hand if you might be on your own. The essential guide for when medical help is not on the way, and that could be exactly where you find yourself during a hurricane. And finally, we have tools and materials that would be needed for cleanup. Some of these items can also be used to help ready your home before the storm. We always want to think of safety first, so make sure you have some protective items. You definitely want to have rain gear, a raincoat, maybe some rain pants in case you need to go out during the storm. Of course, we want to stay safe inside, but every once in a while something does happen and someone has to venture out. You want to make sure to have some sort of reflective safety vest in case you have to go out after dark when the power's out or during the storm so you can be seen. A pair of heavy-duty work gloves will help protect your hands during cleanup. And it's a good idea to have some N95 masks or even a respirator because after the storm, when there's been flooding and water damage, mold sets in quickly, and people have had some serious health effects from living and working in the toxic mold. It also might be a good idea to have a hard hat or some sort of helmet on hand, just in case you do have to venture out during the storm, in case there's any flying projectiles. Some basic tools that you probably already have on hand: a hammer, a screwdriver. If you use power tools, make sure that you have plenty of extra batteries and that all your batteries are charged. Some basic hardware, nails and screws, whatever you would typically use. Some zip ties might come in handy. Having a chainsaw ready to go for cleanup can really be helpful. If you use a gas chainsaw, make sure that you have extra gas on hand. We have this Makita battery-powered chainsaw, and Mr. Wicked Prepared loves this so much that he actually hasn't broken out his gas-powered chainsaw in several years. He uses this for all sorts of things around the house. He's cut all sorts of trees with this, and it really works well. A battery-powered chainsaw has the benefit, of course, of not using gas in case fuel is hard to come by. Also, if a chainsaw is not something that you use often, the gas-powered ones don't usually do too well if they just sit around not being used, so you might have better luck with a battery chainsaw if that's the case. Also, if you can't find fuel, you could recharge these batteries with your generator or your solar power station. You may also want to have a little bit of extra plywood on hand if you have room to store it in case you need that for repairs, and also some screen material, because as you're repairing any broken windows or any holes and gaps, you might want to have the ability to leave some airflow if it's really hot. Definitely make sure you have plenty of tarps and heavy duty plastic, as well as some rope and heavy duty straps, and duct tape is always a good thing to have. Heavy duty contractor trash bags are also a very important item to have for cleanup after the storm. All right, guys, so I hope that I've given you a pretty comprehensive look at everything that you need to do to be prepared for a hurricane should you find yourself in the path of one. Now, like I said, a lot of this is just some pretty basic preparedness concepts and supplies and things that can apply to just about any emergency situation. Big disclaimer here, I live in Maine. We don't get hurricanes quite the way that certain parts of the country do. So if you live in hurricane country and you've been through hurricanes before, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what your experience has been and what kind of things that you've learned. What are your best hurricane preparedness tips? If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed and share our channel. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me an umbrella emoji down in the comments. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.